Have you ever wondered why billionaires like Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, and even Elon Musk subject themselves to freezing cold water every single morning? They're not crazy, and neither am I. What if I told you that just 12 minutes of strategic cold exposure could completely transform your energy, focus, and even your body's ability to burn fat? But wait, isn't cold exposure just another wellness fad backed by pseudoscience and celebrity endorsements? Then why are the world's top performers and most successful people swearing by it? So today I'm going to break down the exact 12-minute cold exposure protocol that's backed by real science, show you how to start even if you're terrified of cold water, and reveal the common mistakes that are probably sabotaging your results. But what exactly is cold exposure therapy, and why is everyone suddenly obsessed with it? Show you how to start even if you're terrified of cold water. So, cold exposure therapy is the deliberate and controlled exposure of your body to cold temperatures, whether through cold showers, ice baths, cryotherapy chambers, or even winter swimming. Then, what makes this different from just being cold is the intentional approach. We're strategically stressing our bodies to trigger specific physiological responses. But haven't humans been dealing with cold since, well, forever? What's the big deal now? So, consider this. Our ancestors didn't have central heating. They regularly faced environmental stresses that modern comforts have eliminated. What scientists have discovered is that these hormetic stressors, like cold exposure, actually make our bodies more resilient. Then, cold exposure isn't just about being tough. It's about reclaiming a type of environmental stimulus our bodies evolved to need, but rarely get in our temperature-controlled world. But is there any real science behind cold exposure, or is it just another wellness trend, backed by anecdotes and celebrity endorsements? The research is actually pretty impressive, so let me break it down. First, cold exposure activates your brown adipose tissue, or BAT, which is a special type of fat that burns regular fat to generate heat. A 2021 study in Cell Metabolism found that regular cold exposure can increase BAT activity by up to 45%, potentially helping with fat loss. Then, cold exposure also triggers a massive release of norepinephrine, up to 5 times your baseline levels, according to research from the Thrombosis Research Institute. This hormone is crucial for focus, attention, and mood regulation. But can cold exposure really improve your immune function? So, studies following Wim Hof's method participants showed a 200% increase in anti-inflammatory markers and improved immune response to pathogens. A 2022 study in PLOS-1 found cold exposure participants had 29% fewer sick days than control groups. Then there's recovery. Athletes using cold immersion after workouts showed 40% faster muscle recovery and reduced delayed onset muscle soreness compared to control groups. So it's not just hype, there's solid science showing cold exposure affects your metabolism, brain chemistry, immune function, and recovery capacity in measurable ways. But what exactly is the optimal cold exposure protocol? How cold? How long? And how do you start if you're terrified of cold water? So I've tested dozens of approaches and reviewed the research to develop this specific 12-minute protocol that balances maximum benefits with minimum time investment. The protocol has 3 phases. Phase 1, the acclimation phase, days 1 to 14. Start with just 15 seconds of cold water at the end of your normal shower. Gradually increase by 10 to 15 seconds each day. Focus on controlled breathing during exposure. By day 14, aim for 2 to 3 minutes of exposure. Phase 2. The adaptation phase, weeks 3 to 6, 5-minute cold exposures 3 to 4 times per week, water temperature between 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, focus on relaxing muscles during exposure, add face-head immersion if using bath method. Phase 3, the optimization phase, week 7 and beyond, 10 to 12-minute exposures 3 to 5 times weekly, water temperature between 45 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 7 to 12 degrees Celsius, practice meditation or breathwork during exposure. Optional contrast therapy, alternating hot-cold. But won't I be miserable doing this? So, remember this crucial point. The goal isn't suffering. The research shows benefits come from the physiological response, not from how uncomfortable you feel. Start where you are, progress gradually, and focus on controlled breathing rather than enduring maximum discomfort. Then, the protocol is progressive, starting with brief exposures that anyone can handle and gradually building your resilience and capacity over time. But why are so many high performers and billionaires obsessed with cold exposure? So, Tim Ferriss, author and investor, credits his morning ice baths with dramatically decreasing anxiety and providing a chemical-free high that lasts for hours. The ability to go into something physically uncomfortable voluntarily makes most of life's challenges seem manageable in comparison. Then, Tony Robbins takes it to another level with a 57-degree plunge pool he uses daily, claiming it primes his nervous system and creates unstoppable energy. But is this just billionaire bravado, or do they know something we don't? So, consider what Twitter co-founder Jack Dorsey revealed about his morning routine. I start with a cold plunge at 5 a.m. Nothing has given me more mental confidence than being able to go from warm bed to cold water. I feel ready for anything after that. Then these high performers aren't just doing it to seem tough. They're strategically using cold exposure as a tool for mental resilience, energy optimization, and nervous system regulation. But why do some people try cold exposure and quit after a few days, while others make it a lifelong habit? So, the biggest mistakes I see people make are, first, starting too extreme. Jumping into ice-cold water for 5 minutes on day one is setting yourself up for failure. Remember, this is about progressive adaptation. Then, second, inconsistent timing. Research shows the metabolic benefits are maximized when cold exposure happens in the morning, while recovery benefits peak when done post-workout or in the evening. But what about breathing? But isn't that just a distraction technique? So, understand this. Your breathing pattern directly affects your nervous system response. Gasping and hyperventilating triggers fight or flight, while slow, controlled breathing activates your parasympathetic system, allowing you to stay in the cold longer and get more benefits. Then avoid these common pitfalls. Don't start too extreme, be strategic about timing and master your breathing to maximize benefits. But can supplements enhance the benefits of cold exposure? So, research suggests a few evidence-based options. L-carnitine, 2 grams daily, has been shown to increase brown fat activation during cold exposure by up to 30%. Then, omega-3 fatty acids improve cell membrane fluidity, helping your body adapt to temperature changes more efficiently. But what about that one weird trick that almost nobody knows about? So, consuming hot beverages like ginger tea before cold exposure has been shown to increase thermogenesis by 15 to 20% in studies, enhancing the metabolic benefits. Then there's contrast therapy, alternating between heat exposure, like a sauna or hot shower, and cold, which some research suggests may amplify both the recovery and metabolic effects. And while supplements aren't necessary, strategic use of these enhancers can potentially boost your results. But how do you know if cold exposure is actually working for you? So I recommend tracking these 5 metrics. 1. Recovery time. How quickly do you stop shivering after exposure? 2. Time capacity. How long can you stay in comfortably? 3. Morning energy levels on a 1 to 10 scale. 4. Resting heart rate, which should gradually lower over weeks. And 5. Subjective mood and focus scores. But what's the single best indicator that it's working? So, look for what researchers call cold adaptation. When your initial shock response diminishes and you can enter cold water with controlled breathing and minimal gasping. This typically happens after 7 to 14 consistent exposures and indicates your nervous system is adapting. Then, track these metrics weekly to see your progress and maintain motivation. So cold exposure isn't just another wellness trend. It's a scientifically validated practice that high performers have been using for years to optimize their bodies and minds. Then, start with the 12-minute protocol I've outlined, avoid the common mistakes, and track your progress consistently. But what's the one thing you absolutely must remember? Remember this: consistency beats intensity. 15 seconds daily will get you further than an occasional 5-minute ice bath. So what's your cold exposure experience been like? Drop a comment below with your biggest question or breakthrough. If you found this valuable, smash that like button, subscribe for more evidence-based optimization strategies, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss next week's video on the perfect supplement stack for cognitive performance. Until then, stay cool.